Welcome to your Sunday dose of a Breakfast Extra. So I was taking a look at my calendar and I realized that in 3 days from today, we celebrate Children's Day in Nigeria. And of course, as per usual, there will be parades, there will be march pasts, there will be government speeches, there'll be smiling photographs besides children holding miniature Nigerian flags. That's not the case everywhere, because somewhere in Oyo State tonight are parents who no longer have reason to celebrate. Some are praying, some are waiting, and some are grieving at the contradiction, of course, and the contradiction tells us something uncomfortable about modern Nigeria, because a country that does not prove to love its children by celebrating them once a year. A country proves that it loves its children by how safe children are when nobody is watching. That is the real test to the functioning state. Not ceremonies, not slogans, not themed anniversaries. A working country is one where children can go to school without parents calculating the risk. A working country is one where classrooms are protected more aggressively than political reputations. A working country is one where the future does not feel dangerous to the young. And a non-functioning country is not necessarily one without wealth. A non-functioning country is one where the most basic responsibilities to the state begin to fall or fail repeatedly. Safety, education, stability, protection, especially for the children, because children are the easiest citizens to betray. They cannot vote, they cannot lobby, they cannot influence policy. All they can do is simply trust the adults to build a society that can and will protect them. And lately, Nigeria has proved and has struggled to honor that trust. In the last few days, the country has once again been confronted with horrifying reports. Children abducted from schools in Oyo State, teachers kidnapped, a teacher was reportedly murdered in captivity, and of course, communities once again considered relatively safe are now confronting levels of fear previously associated with conflict zones. And perhaps the most frightening thing is not even the violence anymore. The most frightening thing is that it is the normalization that we have turned this thing into, because Nigeria has seen this story far too many times. Chibok, Dapchi, Kaduna, Niger State, and now Oyo. Different headlines, same national wounds, which brings us to Children's Day. What exactly are Nigerian children celebrating in 2026? Is it the right to education? When schools are increasingly becoming and feel vulnerable, is it the right to protection? When kidnapping becomes a recurring national trauma, is it the right to dream? When millions of children are growing up surrounded by insecurity, by economic pressure, and by uncertainty? Because Children's Day should not merely be a national celebration. It should be a national audit. A moment where the country honestly asks itself, are our children safer this year than they were before or last year or in previous years? And if we cannot answer that question confidently, then perhaps the conversation Nigeria needs is not about celebration, but it is a conversation about responsibility. It's a conversation about accountability, and it's a conversation about the future of the youth and the children of Nigeria tomorrow. Good morning and welcome to Breakfast Extra. Mazino, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Inam. Unfortunately, I don't have any quips or anecdotes for today because you made that very pointedly how sad the situation is in Nigeria. And I don't exactly know what the Children's Day celebration for this week is going to be like. Maybe we shouldn't even have any. Maybe if we don't get those kids back, there shouldn't be none celebrated. Maybe that will be a subtle protest to the system just so they know how this has gone from just adults protesting to even kids not sure of their lives anymore. But I talk too much. Maybe when you come over, we could talk more about this. But Stella, once again, and good morning to everybody.
Let me come over.
Well, good morning and welcome. This is Breakfast Extra. My name is Mazino Appeal. And of course, for a Sunday edition here on Breakfast Extra today on the show, we begin in West Africa, where political tension are once again in the spotlight following a major shakeup in Senegal. President Bassirou Diomaye Faye. Well, he sacked Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko. We'll be breaking down what led to the decision and what it means to or for governance in Dakar. And still in politics, we turn to Nigeria's ruling party, the APC, where primaries have been held across several states amid withdrawals, internal disagreements, and visible power struggles. With some candidates while they celebrated victory, others, well, they raised concerns about fairness, about party unity, as the road to 2027 continues to take shape. And we'll be going state by state to understand what really happened on the ground with our correspondents. And in our second hour, attention shifts to the economy as the Central Bank of Nigeria holds its benchmark interest rate at 26.5%, same as last year, with inflation still a concern and businesses under pressure. We will be examining what this decision means for manufacturers, what it means for investors, and everyday Nigerians trying to navigate rising costs and tighter financial conditions and zero pockets. Now, in preparation for World Football Day, we will be having a special conversation on the power of football beyond the pitch. Former Super Eagles striker Brownie Dare, as he joins us to reflect on how the game continues to promote unity, fitness, and opportunity, especially for young people across Africa. And in a Weekend Warrior, guess what? We celebrate Arsenal's Premier League triumph and what it represents for African fans. But of course, in our final hour, we turn to developments in Benin, where new leadership is expected as Ramoud Wagdani prepares to be sworn in as president. We'll explore an important health conversation on spinal cord care as calls grow for specialized rehabilitation support for patients across Nigeria. As a packed morning of politics, economy, sports, and of course, human stories, you don't want to miss it. Don't go anywhere because we're just about to get started. But Inam, I wanted to tell, and I hope you let me,
Why wouldn't I let you?
Because it's supposed to be, what they didn't see after yesterday's first conversation. May I?
Mm-hmm.
So yesterday, after our very first conversation about the Oyo instance, the abducted kids, Inam actually broke down in the studio. Inam actually cried. And I do admit that I was close to tears myself. I'm quite emotional, but it was the last story that was told by Ifirobo here about the kid who went to school practically hungry and then didn't come back home at all. And it gave a very stark reality of the separation from what the governance is doing at this critical moment right now, electioneering, and what the lived realities of people in these places are. And before, it would be that, oh, these are adults complaining. But when it came to that story, it just brought the reality home to the fact that it wasn't just the adults anymore. It's now the kids growing up. And since we're celebrating Children's Day in a couple of days, growing up, it was about being kids. It was about flying kites, rolling tires down the street and all of that. But to be a part of a confrontation as a child, and not just a part, but the center of it, is so dark. And yeah, I thought I'd start the show by actually telling what the reality was like for us in the studio after that conversation. I went back and I saw it, and yeah, they wouldn't understand what had happened the next conversation. So yeah, it was rather sad.
It's really sad. It's like you said, and unfortunately, you know how from every generation to, different generations, you always talk about your upbringing and stuff, and you'll hear like when your mom and dad tell you about their upbringing, it's always a little bit different, but there's never any like horrible, gruesome something. My mom would tell me that you guys are lucky now, you guys have cars and whatnot. We would walk to school, we would do this, we played with cows and we did all of that. It was always a progression. Yeah, so with us, it's okay. Well, in my childhood, what I tell my daughter is, well, I got, by the grace of God, I could travel. We did this, we did that. I have favorite movies that I watched. We played kites, Tamagotchis, and all of those kind of things. But when you look at the average Nigerian child now, and you sit down with them, and I think many of the times, I like it because there's this guy that you always, on the strips, there's
Bulama,
who's always uncle asking father-daughter kind of thing. You get to the fact, you see that actually, this is the narrative that
it's drawing them in.
It's drawing them in. Like, till today, I've got a friend of mine who when this whole Boko Haram thing had started years ago, she was in Jos. She went to a school called Baptist. And when the first time those things happened, she was at school. So she remembers having to be evacuated and all of those things. And what we don't know is that people don't forget those things,
not as kids.
And unfortunately, the only thing that we can do is sympathize.
Yeah, indeed. Tell you what, Let's take a break, and when we get back, it's going to be the dailies, if I'm not mistaken, while Inam explains to me exactly what Tamagotchi means. We'll be back. Welcome again. Today we start with Focus Africa as we go to Senegal. This morning, breaking political developments out of Senegal, where President Bassirou Diomaye Faye has reportedly dismissed Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko in a dramatic shakeup at the very top of government. Sonko, who has been a key ally and one of the most influential figures in Senegal's current administration, is now out of office following rising tensions within the leadership. The decision has triggered widespread reactions across West Africa, especially given how central both men were to the political movement that brought the current administration into power.
Now, this development is not just a change of prime ministers. No, it raises bigger questions about stability, about governance, and the future direction of Senegal's political transition. With this sudden dismissal, attentions turn to what happens next, how the government will be restructuring, how supporters of both men will react, and what this means for one of West Africa's most closely watched democracies. To help us understand what this political shakeup means for Senegal and the wider West Africa region, we are joined by Oluwole Ojewale, a senior researcher at the Institute of Security Studies in Dakar, Senegal. Mr. Oluwole, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Breakfast Extra. Mazino.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ojewale, let's start by asking, first of all, from the beginning. We all know that Sonko was very, very important when he had to do with the system that we have now in Senegal. In fact, most people argue that he might have been president. He was the most vocal, most dramatic, most outwardly seen. If not for the fact that he was restricted during the elections, maybe it might have been him. What exactly led to this sudden dismissal of the Prime Minister currently by President Diomaye Faye?
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
I think I will summarize the evolution of what we're witnessing in terms of a clash of ambition, because like you have rightly said, Sonko was the man behind the wave that brought about President Diomaye Faye's ascendancy into the presidency. But don't forget that he also had his own eyes on the finishing line, which is to perhaps become the president at some point, maybe in the future. So I think that was what we started feeling and seeing in terms of public disagreement, in terms of policy choices and options, which goes to show that perhaps one man is looming larger than the president, and perhaps feels he has the prerogative to determine the primary trajectory of governance. I believe so strongly that there are more issues that were not in the public domain that maybe people can only speculate or insinuate in terms of how the duo eventually arrive at where we are now. So I think it's really about clash of ambition, and then the fact that, as we have seen, not only in Senegal, we've also seen in Nigeria and elsewhere. I think it's about godfatherism and politics, really, and then who wields the strongest power. I think it's power play to summarize it in a nutshell.
Quite interesting to see this, because in Africa right now, we see a rise where there are specific leaders that are, known to be beacons of hope, and Senegal proved to a certain degree to be one of those. But this was a political partnership, of course, that was seen as very strong during the election period. At what point did the cracks begin to show between the two gentlemen?
I think the cracks started not up to maybe 6 months or thereabout when the government was formed, really. And people started seeing droplet of comments. People also started seeing divisionism among their party members, some who are for president, some who are for the prime minister. Coupled with the fact that the prime minister has been a charismatic leader who, in spite of the fact that he wasn't the number one person in the party, in government, nevertheless, he controls the party that brought them into power. Not only controls it, he's the founder of PASTEC, And there are a lot of people in the government and even in the political party and in the parliament who still probably see Sonko as their primary leader, perhaps not the president, because everybody has emerged out of his own shadow. Diomaye used to be the secretary of the party. The restriction placed on Sonko made him to push Diomaye forward. So these are internal contradictions that I believe they were not able to resolve and that led to where we are now. But there are cautionary examples in other parts of Africa, even in the region. This is what played out in Gambia and some other places in which somebody had to give up his own position because of the restriction that made the person not to be able to contest for the president. And today, I think Adama Barrow in Gambia is probably going through the fourth term. The man who primarily catapulted him to the front line became prime minister, vice president or prime minister, I'm not sure, but he was eventually removed. And then we have seen this movie before. And like most commentators and analysts are saying, I think it's something that was predictable, just that most people, like myself, didn't know that it was going to come earlier like this.
Sir Jawali, Sonko was also known as the backbone for Senegal, financial expert. But there seems to be some disagreements between them when it came to how they managed the IMF and also foreign leaders. Would you say that that was a very big factor in how things have turned out right now?
Well, I have no privilege to really know what went behind the scene. I will still take that as a small screen, really, because like I mentioned, what is at the heart of it is class of ambition. We must not lose sight of that. Even if you disagree in terms of how to manage the fiscal issues in the country, the budget, the IMF loans, and other fiduciary issues, I still believe largely that such disagreements can be managed because it is the same party that is in government. It is the same party that is in the parliament. They are in the majority. I would say they do not have internal mechanism to resolve such issues within their party before it blows out. But, you know, to be able to perhaps give the dog another name, a bad name, then you see such political bickerings getting or featuring into the public domain because it's about who is shaping the narrative, who is painting or tarring another one with bad brush. So I think it's a bad politics that spill out into the public domain, not why that is vital. The same government in power, the same government in parliament can be disagreeing over something that is much more easier to resolve within the party because it's more of a party affair, even though it's a public policy issue. If it had been the parliament that is putting up that kind of check, but these are two individuals that one appointed the other, one actually propelled the other into the presidency. I believe so strongly that such issues are not supposed to spill into the public domain in the first place if there are no other ulterior motives that are not known to the public.
Well, what other ulterior motive could there be in such a democracy like Senegal? Because it seems to be a beacon for the rest of West Africa. This is resonating through after we heard the news. So what other ulterior motive could there be that we're not seeing? This is just speculation, but you're in Senegal and would like to know.
It's about 2029.
No.
Election is going to take place in 2029. A single term here is 5 years. The prime minister definitely wants to become the president. And I think he has also studied the trajectory very well. Senegal is one of the most advanced democracies in the region, vibrant democracy, youthful democracy, and then they hardly reward a party for more than 10 times in the recent history. The prime minister probably knew fully well that if the current president should serve another term, the possibility that they are going to return their party is very thin, looking at historical data. And he probably want to quickly take advantage of going through the second term that Diomaye was supposed to go for, and also take his own shot at the presidency. I believe it's about 2029, and less about the public issues about the national finance. Of course, it's very, very important because that is the biting economic realities that the people, the Senegalese, have to face. But much more than that, I believe we should focus and not lose sight of the class of ambition that is in this contest.
And then if we're looking into the future, what is the likely political institutional process going to look like going forward, especially in terms of appointing a new prime minister and, of course, restructuring the government?
The president definitely by constitution must appoint the prime minister. But let's put on the table that politics trumps everything. So there are different scenarios that, around what is going to play out. Sonko and his supporters are saying they are going to move fully into opposition. What that means is that a lot might not really scale through in terms of parliamentary approval. There are also legal lacuna along the way in terms of how divisive people are in the country now, in terms of what should be the future of Sonko. I assume that he knew this day was going to come, and he actually contested a parliamentary seat from CBN, where Sonko comes from. He won the election and put a proxy there because the electoral process, the constitution here allows me to contest for, let's say, maybe senatorial district from where I come from in Nigeria now, and at the same time refuse to take that position and put somebody there. The regulation based on the parliamentary regulation is that if you want to go back to occupy that seat, the person that you put there as a proxy is going to vacate it and give a 1-month notice. So therefore, Sonko has a possibility of going back to the parliament to take his full seat and then fully be in charge of opposition affairs that pastors want to constitute themselves into now. The president also is there are speculations around that he's trying to build an alliance with the Macky Sall group that were rejected when they gave him a mandate. That also is another trajectory. So we can see the ejection of the president from PASTEF moving into another coalition in which we are not really so sure whether it will be in the majority. And if that plays out, then maybe PASTEF might now become a serious challenge that the president will have to contend with. The last thing that I think is very important for me to put on the table here is that people are also divisive in terms of the trajectory I painted about Sonko going back to the parliament. And what they are saying is that since he was restricted from contesting election originally, that he should not be able to go into the parliament. I think there is going to be a judicial pronouncement on that if they so decide to take the matter to court. And what that means is that the president will now have to tread very carefully, because in Senegal, voters always gravitate towards an underdog in a contest, in a power contestation like this. So if that happens, then he will probably have to judge from history, see how PASTEF was propelled into power, and not really make Sonko to become a victim of judicial victimization, which brought them into office in the first place. So I think the future looks a bit complicated now, but those are the scenarios that lie ahead.
I was just about to say that because it seems like it's the exact same situations that brought Gio into power. But you referred to, if I'm correct, your reference to underdog was to Sonko. But Sonko seems to be the one with the most political influence. If constitutionally the president does have the power to actually eject the prime minister, does Sonko still hold that political influence even while he's not prime minister? And what impact would that make?
Yes, he holds a very significant influence. And I believe when the president has an edge politically, he needs to tread very carefully. Sonko was the founder of PASTEF, the party that brought the president into power, the party that has the largest members that constitute the majority in the parliament. What that means is that as long as he has those people lining up behind him, he has a firm control of the party, he has a firm control of the grassroots, the support that they have enjoyed until now. And coupled with the fact that the president will now need to be looking shopping for platform, so to speak, coalition that is going to probably keep him in government and ensure his continuity even post-2029. So on the streets, Sonko is very, very popular. He's a charismatic leader, and you have to deal with such individuals very, very, in a very careful manner. Otherwise, like I mentioned, Sonko came a distant third in 2019 election. He was not supposed to be an issue of political charisma. He was not supposed to enjoy that. until Macky Sall went for him, and the people felt like, oh, you went for the first person, we didn't talk. You went for the second person, we didn't talk. This time around, they rally behind Sonko, and that is how he has become the popular politician that he has become. He's not a politician that anybody can wish away in Senegal right now. And the president, even though he has the political power to do so many things, politically, we have to tread carefully with Sonko. Yes, he's an underdog looking at the political power that the president with, but the president still needs to be very careful in terms of how he deals with Sonko politically so that it doesn't backfire and we see a replica of what brought him into the office in the first place in 2024.
Now, finally, before we let you go, when we talk about reconciliation, do you see the possibility of reconciliation between both figures, or has this political relationship effectively broken down beyond repair?
I think it's going to be, reconciliation is going to be a tough deal here because I believe egos have been bruised and then except maybe some people prevail, maybe some headers in the land, which is very, very unlikely. I saw a video on the internet of Macky Sall, trying to, throw something into the arena, to the public arena, which I believe probably make a mockery of this. And we are also seeing speculations about alliance with Macky Sall. Those are people that are going to benefit from the present chaos. And it's very, very unlikely that looking at the protagonist and how they are aligning, that anyone is probably going to seek reconciliation. You have rejected somebody out of government. It's very, very unlikely that the person is going to take your olive branch, even if extended. It's an uncharted water now. Nobody can predict what is going to happen in the recent of it.
But hey, you know what, Mr. Ojewale? Fact is, this looks like one of those series you watch on television where in the beginning, or rather at the end of the first season, both partners are successful. And then in the second season, they're both against each other, protagonists and antagonists. So I'm wondering in this case now, what should Senegalese be looking out for in the second season of Senegal?
The unfortunate thing is that it's still a very long way to go. The government is barely 2 years old now. So there is still 3 years to the election. And I'm afraid that if politics begin to dominate governance, the Senegalese are going to be the one that are going to lose out on the final analysis because the people hardly benefit from politics. What benefits them is good governance. But politicians are usually fixated on politics. And like I mentioned earlier, that is playing out in Nigeria, it's playing out in Gambia and other places. It's a very unfortunate thing because a lot of people really reposed their hope in Senegal, a younger president, no ambition, got catapulted into the zenith of the political office in the land and all those things. I think the distractions are unwarranted, are unnecessary, because on the final analysis, what benefits the people, like I mentioned, is not the political division among the party players, but good governance. But you know, the moment governance takes the back seat, then there is going to be a massive disenchantment on the part of the people, because what dominates the daily is going to be who gets what, not really in terms of how infrastructure is being developed, how the debt crisis which they have put forward is also being managed. And don't forget that even if you constitute a new government, even if they hit the ground running, they don't get to fix things in a very quick manner as people will expect, because it's like starting all over again really now. And you can't really tell what really counts for the last 2 years. I think it's an unfortunate incident in which most people, watchers like me, who appreciate the vibrant democracy in Senegal, are not really happy about.
All right, then.
Mr. Oluwale Ojewale, I'd like to say thank you so much for your insights on this developing story, of course, as it is a News Central fashion. We'll continue to follow this closely and bring you more details emerging from Dakar. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much for having me.
You know, let's go on a quick break, but when we return, we bring you lots more right here on Breakfast Extra on a Sunday morning. You stay with us.
Welcome back. It's our second conversation here for Breakfast Extra. Now we turn to the All Progressives Congress, where party primaries across several states have been concluded amid a mix of celebration and controversy and visible internal tension. While some candidates have emerged victorious, there are also reports of withdrawals, there are reports of allegations of manipulation and concerns over how competitive the process really was. Across the country, the primaries have revealed different political realities, from high voter turnouts in some states to claims of intimidation and dissatisfaction in others.
Also, for many observers, the big question is not just who won tickets, but how the process was conducted, with accusations of power blocs influencing outcomes and party stakeholders divided in their inter-preparation of the exercise. Attention is now shifting to what this means for the APC's internal cohesion going forward. Our correspondents have been tracking the process across different states, but we will be speaking briefly with
Umaru
Kirawa in Borno, Mana Balagbobo in Kogi State, Austin Azu in Delta, Love Help Me Mazino Oyedokun in Lagos, and Aliyu Wazari, APC Chieftain and Managing Director, Federal Housing Authority, for deeper perspective on what this means for the party's road to 2027.
First off, we have Umaru Kirawa joining us. Umaru, thank you very much for joining. We're aware that you're going to be out very soon to go monitor some more, but do tell us, what was the atmosphere like during the APC primaries in your location?
Well, at the initial stage, the APC primaries seems to have a little bit of tension because of some late in consensus arrangement, but largely it was peaceful and it was successful despite different parties having different view, particularly with regard to some of the aspirants not withdrawing, rather withdrawing very lately. But we saw it's a peaceful one in Borno State, and largely the aspirants withdraw to join the consensus bandwagon, where we saw the emergence of different individuals from different background and different local government areas, from the House of Assembly to the Senate, and of course to the gubernatorial election primaries. We saw candidates withdrawing and then supporting the party most suitable candidates or party most suitable aspirants becoming candidate, and we saw large number of people coming out to be counted as direct primaries. For example, for the president, which was done yesterday, it's an overwhelming result for the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in Borno State, because his opponent had 0 vote, as has been announced by the state coalition officer, that is the state governor, Professor Babagana Umar Zulum. And, you know, it's just largely peaceful, and stakeholders were able to hide some of the problems that many will have known. They were able to hide it behind closed door, and we saw consensus emergence of candidates. And some of the candidates, they are the only candidate, like that of Northern Borno, Senator Mohammed Tahir Manguno, the chief whip of the Nigerian Senate, and of course Senator Mohammed Ali Ndume as for Southern Borno, as well as Senator Kakashe Hulawan, which emerged as the senatorial candidate for Borno Central. It's largely peaceful, and yes, there are challenges, but it went seamless in Borno State.
Can you give us a bit of insight in some of the challenges? I was going to ask you about security, of course, and political tensions, but you did say that it was slightly peaceful. So can you help us identify some of the challenges and how we are, you know, how they're diverting and working on those challenges?
Well, one of the challenges, like I've said earlier, is the issue of the aspirants were not able to buy into the consensus idea, but they had to do it lately. And you know, the party constitution provides, so if the consensus did not work, direct primaries should work. We saw it in the primaries for Maiduguri Metropolitan Council, which saw the emergence of Abdul Qadir Rahis as candidate for member representing Maiduguri Metropolitan Council, which was counted, and then we saw him emerge as the candidate for the party. You know, largely the security situation, many people are expecting to see security breach, but fortunate enough in Borno State, it was peaceful and there was no security breach. In fact, according to the state governor, who is the state coalition officer for the presidential, the APC presidential primaries took place across the 27 local government areas of Borno State, and returning officers were able to come back to Maiduguri, the Borno State capital, to announce results of the various local government areas of the various wards in the state. And then the governor made the pronouncement with regard to the winner of the presidential primaries, which President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was able to win over 414,988 votes across Borno State, according to the announcement by the state governor, who is the state coalition officer.
Umaru Kirawa, thank you very much for giving us updates from Borno State for yesterday, from the primaries.
From there, I think we'll just move to our guest who joins us virtually, Mazino, Aliyu Wazari of the APC Chieftain. Thank you so much, Aliyu, for standing by and for joining us. Now, across several states, we're seeing reports of withdrawals, tensions, and allegations of imposition during the APC primaries. How would you describe the overall conduct of the exercise?
Good morning, viewers. Thank you for this opportunity to put more light to the recently concluded APC primaries in the country. As normal and as usual, as we know, there will be complaints when political parties conducted their primary elections. Some will feel disfranchised, some will fault the process. But what we saw this time around, you know, the electoral aid has properly guided everyone on all the political parties on the motto of primaries is either you go for consensus or you go for direct primaries. In so many of the states, we're able to reach out to the consensus agreement in between the aspirants and even before the date of the primaries. And some states had to get to the date of the primaries, negotiating, dialoguing, and discussions, because politics is all about dialogue and discussions. And for example, like in my state, in about the first election that took place was the House of Representatives. I think in among the 8 positions, the 8 House of Representative positions in the state was the only one in the central that was having a big tension. They had to go into so many different meetings, and then some of them were able to withdraw. And I think a number of like 5 or so then go to the election, and then at the end of the day, winner emerge. Like in the Senate, in Adamawa State, it was seamless. There was no tension. There was a high level of dialogue at the senatorial positions. Consensus were reached, and happened to be one of the people that emerged at the Senate was the sitting governor, His Excellency Right Honorable Ahmadu Umaru Fintri. So then the last one, second to the last, was the governorship. Some has withdrawn for some aspirants, and then about 3 or 4 of them has gone into the contest, and it was very peaceful. At the end of the day, winner was emerged across all the 226 wards and the 21 local government in the state. And then at the end of the day, the result was announced, and the state was very peaceful. There was no any other raising voice on either. There are irregularities and some of this. So, but you know, normally, when election is being conducted, there are people who will be aggrieved, and there are people who will feel that there is something that should have happened. We're in democracy, and our democracy is growing. So all these kind of things, as time goes on, we will get these elections.
Aliyu, let me jump on there, where you said democracy is growing. I hear you, but I also hear you say plenty about consensus. And that seems to be the only thing we heard throughout yesterday when we hear about the arrangements that were happening internally. So it seems to me that these internal agreements are, they're sacrificing democracy for stability. I mean, how much participation is left when all we have is consensus?
Okay, consensus is part of politics, because politics is consensus is dialogue, consensus is understanding, consensus is putting the country first and putting the party's primacy first. So there are people among the members of the party who are aspiring for these positions that might have likely been rooted and have acceptability within their communities, or within their constituencies, or within their state.
Then it will be great to let the communities or constituencies decide instead of these agreements from inside of the party. Because it seems like they're just simply saying, oh, you're my person and I think you can do this, why don't you go? That doesn't really sound like a constituency's agreement.
Okay, that is why you see in some of the constituencies these consensus were reached, and in some of the constituencies, no. The electorate insisted, and the aspirants also insisted, that let them go for elections and then the popular candidates wins. Not only in our party, the APC, but in almost all the political parties, some of these things has happened. So if I say democracy is growing, putting understanding and putting the country first is the main thing that every Nigerian should have in mind, because the country first before any political party. And the political party is superior to any member of the party, because the political party is supreme. So if political party is dialoguing in between the candidates, in between aspirants, to have the best out of the best among all the contestants and make it easier not to go into elections and spendings and all that, I think it is good for democracy.
All right.
Aliyu, if we can just pause with you for a moment, and we call in our correspondent, Austin Azu, who joins us from Delta. Austin, if you can hear me, please just give us an insight on how you could describe the conduct of the APC primaries in Delta State, please. Austin, can you hear me?
Presidency has come and gone in Delta State. Yeah, a large number. Yes, I can hear you.
Go
so
ahead.
large numbers of APC supporters went to the poll yesterday, which is on Saturday, across the 270 political wards across the 25 local government areas. And of course, after the election we announced, nevertheless, the election was adjudged peaceful and transparent across the wards that the election took place.
Yep.
Austin, I think we can gather from what you said that the elections were peaceful from yesterday, but that's as much as we could get because the audio turned bad there for a second. We hope that we can fix that and come back to you so you can give us more detail from Delta State. But for now, let's go to Abuja, where Sagir Ibrahim was monitoring the situation. Sagir, good morning. Thank you very much. Give us an idea what the atmosphere was like yesterday during the primaries for APC in Abuja.
Well, good morning, Mas. Good morning, Inam. For the presidential primaries, we observed certain locations across Abuja, but sadly, the thing is that during the conduct of these primary elections, one thing that we've noticed is for several locations, you would realize that no activity is going on. I start from the senatorial election. Just last week, we observed across different locations. Mazino, I believe it was you and I that spoke on the news. When you asked these questions, I was live at one of the locations, and you saw that there was not a presence of a single political official. And then we had situations where members of the party who were expected to vote for candidates had come and were looking for officials from the party who were charged with the responsibility of carrying out this vote count, and were not present. In one area in Abuja, like Oroso, for example, we went to the primary school there where they had waited for hours upon hours. Some came as early as 6 a.m. They returned at around 1:32 p.m. and still there was no official there. So this is most of the situations that we characterize the conduct of the presidential primary elections in several locations in Abuja as well. Now, I digress a little bit to the governorship as well. We observed the conduct in Yola, the Adamawa state capital. We went to several locations within that area, and it was a similar situation that was recorded. And Mazino, I must say, Inam, also, that it's not so surprising, especially considering, the fact that following the amendments of the Electoral Act, it has provided for a direct primary, section 86, I believe, provided for that. So while members of the party might insist that the direct primaries would be the option, especially when there's been a breakdown in agreements and the consensus arrangement does not work, the direct primary does not necessarily work in the way and the sense that I think that the Electoral Act had posited for it to work. And Mazino, you agree with me that this is going to be impossible because if you calculate the number of words that we have in Nigeria, it is about 8,900 or thereabout. Now, if a direct primary election in this instance is going to be conducted, for example, for the presidential election, it means that simultaneously across all these 8,900 words, members of the party are expected to queue and be counted, and this should be recorded. But the Electoral Act did not specifically state whether INEC officials, members of, from INEC, would be present to observe these countings because it mentioned that it was strictly an affair of the party. I believe that this is where the concern about conduct comes in, especially when we know that politics, especially the kind of politics that we play in Nigeria, where it is heavily dependent on interest much more than national interest, personal interest much more than national interest. You could just see locations where the primary elections would not hold at all, officials will not come at all, and at the end of the day, results would be announced and you'd hear that a candidate wins. This is some of the issues that we have observed across several locations with members of the parties complaining that they have been disenfranchised and were not even given an opportunity to even select those that they believe would be able to carry the party's flag. Across the different areas that we observed, this was what we found. Masino.
So to confirm, you observed that there were wards with little activity, but yet a winner emerging at the end.
Positive.
Wow, that's very interesting. Now let's talk about this consensus business that has been about. What did you observe when it comes to the internal democracy of these parties? I know this is stepping out of the activities of yesterday, but you are in Abuja. You have you have your eye on the biggest prize here. What did it seem like to you?
Well, Maz, for the consensus arrangements, I must say that it also has its own issues, especially considering when we have had situations where certain candidates would be announced as the consensus candidates for the party, and then you have others who come out releasing statements to say they were not a party of that. Now, for example, the Electoral Act expressly provided that for the consensus arrangements to work, all aspirants who are contesting for that position would have to write or sign a written agreement stating that they are stepping down for the candidate whom the party has agreed to be the consensus candidate. But in a situation where you have the party, for example, come out to announce that so and so person has been made the consensus candidate of the party, and then you have a situation where other candidates come out to say they were never a part of that arrangement, they were not aware of a consensus arrangement. I mean, this just becomes a recipe for failure, or rather a recipe for the party to look really bad in the eyes of the electorate, that they might be looking like they want to woo, ahead of the election. And this is the concern that many of these stakeholders had, particularly in Adamawa State, where they came out to announce an individual as the winner, of the election. And when we were getting reaction from several of the party stakeholders who were there, many of them described it as a heist. Some described it as a sham. They called on the national body of the All Progressive Congress to weigh into this development, else it might not, spell good or even augur well for the party in the state. So these are some of the issues that these arrangements, whether consensus or direct primaries, have. So if you ask me, Maz, I would say the both are not exactly the best right now, at least from what we have observed on the field. But the good thing about, acts such as the Electoral Act is it serves as a litmus. You go, you test, and when you realize that there are areas that they may be, bottlenecks or gray areas, then come back and readjust. But the question now is whether it is possible to do the adjustments now, because elections is basically 7-8 months away. So whatever adjustments or amendments that would have to be made to the Electoral Act to, strengthen it more, to make provisions for areas that will prevent for, these skirmishes to be able to happen and then be gotten away with, would be made. It would be adjusted, and maybe hopefully we'll see the Electoral Act strengthened to cover and cater for all of these gray areas that we've seen holding sway over the course of the last few weeks. Mas.
Well, thank you very much there. Sagir will continue to come to you for updates. We have our guest standing by, so we'll be going back to our guest.
Now, Mr. Aliyu, my question to you is, when we look at the grassroots choices, to what extent do you believe that these primaries reflect genuine grassroots choices versus influence from political blocs or powers, centers within the party?
Well, let me chip in and say a word from what your correspondent has said. I saw him in my state. And most of these complaints, people who are aspirants and do not have the capacity to put agents all over the state. Like there's a candidate who said he was omitted from the primaries because he has not followed the process. We have 226 votes, where like yesterday, the presidential election, and everyone has participated across all the 226 votes. And at the end of the day, the president emerged the winner, who won Adamawa State in the primaries. And then to the choices of the grassroots, APC itself is a very popular and accepted political party in the country. Yes, these grievances will continue to, some will continue to be complaining, and then the party will continue to have meetings with stakeholders and aspirants who have not gotten the tickets through. So the candidates, most of the candidates being presented are popular, and we stand chances of winning elections. So, but the dialogue, as I said earlier, in politics will not end until the last day of the general election, until when you have won. And even if you won, the party is trying to see how they will make sure that people doesn't just go to courts and then litigations and so on and so forth. So we are very hopeful. The candidates being selected by the party, the candidate being elected under the platform of the party, either through the consensus of those who emerge through the direct primaries, will at the end of the day emerge victorious.
Well, I'm not sure if you answered the question that Inam asked initially regarding grassroots participation when it comes to these blocks and consensus arrangements. How much do you think they reflect grassroots representation?
Yeah, it represents a larger interest of the party members generally. And most of these complaints, as you hear, that some people will tell you they have not been included in the process of the consensus, and then at the end of the day, one person was announced. I'm sure there is no state in Nigeria whereby the first meeting is where the consensus was reached, and then there are consultations from the state level to local government level to the ward level, where that is where it reflects the grassroots interest. So every stakeholder position is being included, and it's being represented in most of the consensus arrangement. So I think the question in particular you're asking, either if it reflects the grassroots interest. Yes, I will tell you in capital letter, yes, it has.
Well, Aliyu, thank you very much for spending your Sunday morning here with us to reflect on the primaries from yesterday. We wait to see where this takes us. Well, we know it's 2027. We'll wait to see the bigger picture. Thank you very much for honoring our invitation here on Breakfast Extra.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll be going over to Benin Republic, where we have our correspondent, Kathleen Ndomo, who will be giving us an update on the situation of things there as we look at the transition in government.
You're welcome back. And in the story for today, we head to Benin Republic, where Benin Republic will swear in a new president in the economic capital of Cotonou, Romuald Wandagni, the finance minister who spent a decade reshaping the country's economy, takes the oath of office later today, succeeding President Patrice Talon after 10 years in power. Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima is among the regional dignitaries gathered for this occasion. Our correspondent, Kathleen Ndomo, is on the ground in Cotonou. Kathleen, good morning.
So, Kathleen, the ceremony begins in hours. What's the atmosphere like in Cotonou? You were very excited yesterday matching with the ladies. So this morning, what should viewers be watching out for?
Mazino, good morning. Good morning to you in the studio. I am still excited. As you can see here, we are at the Cotonou Congress Hall, the country's center of unity for everything that happens politically and socially. And dignitaries are arriving right here in the Congress Hall where this ceremony is going to take place in a few hours. And those dignitaries comprise of people from every walk of life. They have been coming from the region, from the country, and even internationally. And they are going to witness the historic event that will happen here. If you remember, the elections took place on a Sunday, and this swearing in is also holding on a Sunday, and it's a similar atmosphere of anticipation and hope. Cotonou has been awake with people expectant, even as we continue to see that security forces are deployed on every street, and they are making sure that security is going to happen here as the country expects the swearing in of a new president. People are going about their normal activities like those going to churches. And like I said, there's also security in this Congress Hall where the ceremony will take place with national colors lining every area of this Congress Hall. And like I said, some key moments will define the ceremony today. The oath-taking, which is the precise second Wadani legally becomes president. The presentation of the grand collar of national orders. The handover of the command flag to the chief of staff in a country that has survived 2 coup attempts in 15 months. That transfer of military command carries specific weight. And finally, Wadani's inaugural address, as every word will be watched closely here and across this region. So that's what is going to happen here in a few minutes, Mazino.
Now, Kathleen, that's a very beautiful background, actually, where you are. But we do know for a fact that Nigeria's Vice President Kashim Shettima is also among the dignitaries that are present today. What does this tell us, about the significance of today beyond Benin's borders?
Absolutely. It tells us that this inauguration is being read regionally as something more than a routine handover. Nigeria was the country that supported Benin in foiling the December 2025 coup attempt here, deploying Air Force assets within hours. Vice President Kashim Shettima's presence today could be said to be that diplomatic continuation of the intervention. And Abuja is by the same handshake affirming its commitment to constitutional governance in the wider region. With 4 of Benin's neighbors under military rule, the attendance of regional leaders at this civilian inauguration is itself a political stance. They are not just witnessing a ceremony, they are here to endorse a model of governance that this region desperately needs. Yeah.
Talon prepares to hand over. How is he being remembered? He was celebrated. We had women celebrating around you yesterday as they showed their appreciation. What unfinished business do you think he has left behind?
So economically, his record is actually real. Analysts report growth from 3.3 to 7.5%. That's a budget deficit that's essentially been halved. The nation is also reporting 14,000 jobs through what they call the Glo-Jigbe zone. There's been free schooling for girls extended nationwide. These are just some measurable achievements under the Talon era. Now, regarding the political space, at a government press conference earlier this week, Talon's spokesman refused to call imprisoned opposition figures, including Madugu and Joel Aivo, who are political prisoners. When he was asked about a possible presidential pardon before today, he offered only that it's going to happen maybe in 96 hours. Now, many things can happen, he said. Those hours have since passed. So whether Wadani opens that political space is the most consequential, unanswered question of this inauguration that's going to happen here in a few hours. Mazino.
Stellar reporting there by our correspondent and reporter Kathleen Dogmo. We will be on standby to track the inauguration in the Benin Republic. Thank you so much, Kathleen, for your insights.
Now, let's move on to business here in Nigeria. And the CBN as well, they have put in place, not put in place, but held fast to the interest benchmark. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria has maintained the benchmark interest rate at 26.5%. It's a decision that immediately sets the tone for borrowing costs, business expansion, the inflation management across the country. Now, while the CBN says the move is aimed at stabilizing prices, many Nigerians are asking already what this means for everyday life and struggling businesses, for manufacturers, for small businesses. High interest rates often translate into expensive loans, as you know, reduced production capacity, and also increased pressures on operation cost.
But at the same time, inflation remains a major concern, raising the question of whether holding rates steady will ease price pressures or deepen economic strain in the short term. This morning, the big question is very simple and very clear. Is this a stabilization move for the economy or a further squeeze on already struggling Nigerians and industries? To help us now break this down, we are joined by Stanley
Honora,
economic analyst and fintech advocate. Thank you so much for joining us, Stanley.
Thank you, Stanley.
Good morning.
Stanley,
good morning. It's good to
for
be here
joining
with
us.
you,
Yes.
Mazino.
Yeah, Stanley, first of all, I would like you to, because when we talk about these economic numbers and things, not everybody understands. So if you could break it down for us, to the average man who's listening out there who doesn't understand what 26.5% could do to his pocket or his manufacturing bottom line, explain, as you normally do, what this means.
Okay, like I say, calm down. Let me explain.
Exactly.
The idea behind the interest rate is that at the current interest rate in 26.5 that the CBN is holding, it means that the banks cannot lend to you below that point. So you are going to see some loans going up to 27, 28, and in most cases around 30%, because you are pricing in the risk of giving out that money. If it doesn't return, the cost, all that is that that a business needs to run are added extra. And depending on the sector of the economy that you are in, is priced differently. That's what the banks price their loans differently. So if you are maybe within the manufacturing sector that is probably unstable at the moment, the banks can price it higher. If you are within maybe the FMCG, the fast-moving consumer goods segment on the retail side that is moving very fast, the banks can price it lower. So what this does is that for most businesses, maintaining this rate as it is still keeps the interest rate around what we've always had it.
Mm-hmm.
We've all complained that interest rates are expensive for small businesses. But on the central bank side, looking at the macro, what they are looking at is on a broader scale. If we reduce interest rates with inflation rising due to the war in Iran and a number of factors, infrastructural factors in Nigeria, insecurity and all, if we then reduce interest rates, what happens to the money in circulation that just balloons because people don't know where to put it? And there's a lot of money. And then election coming up again in 2027. So with all this, they just said, let's just hold the interest rate at what it is so that we can see how we can, if things improve going forward, maybe then they can reduce it.
So to put it mildly, it's pegged against uncertainty. All right.
At the moment.
Stanley, now the CBN says that this move is put in play to tackle inflation. Touch wood. Now, from your analysis, how effective is holding rates steady in actually reducing rising prices?
So, what you should know is that inflation is in layman terms, is the change in price of goods. And sometimes some other people say it's too much money chasing fewer goods. When you hold the interest rate at what it is, if you increase interest rates, it means that your ability to save, the interest that you get from saving, either with the government or with most banks, increases. So most people take their money and go and put in the money market. That's why you see a lot of money market instruments at the moment doing well, and it was even doing better when the interest rate was higher. So people are putting their money there. So it mops up that excess liquidity, that excess money in circulation. That way, people can manage expectations. The CBN can manage expectations. Now, inflation has risen due to factors both within and outside the country. And for investors, every investor is looking for the best return on his money, especially for foreign investors. When they bring in their money into Nigeria, they want to get the best return. As CBN's interest rate is elevated, it means that they are getting a very good return on their money. If you then reduce interest rates and your inflation is rising, it means that the value of your money will be dropping too. And if I'm not getting commensurate value for that, for the money that I have put with you in form of investment, I would look for other sources of getting the best return for myself. And that then leads to capital flight. And if that then leads to capital flight, a lot of the monies that you have, if it starts to leave, that's a problem on itself. And then if your currency depreciates further, it affects the amount for your repayment for loans that you have borrowed internationally, both for the government and for businesses. So it has its own ripple effect. So maintaining rates has a lot that it has to do in stabilizing the economy.
So the central bank is trying to dissuade from lending. Am I correct? Or from borrowing? In a way. In a way. Because if they put out that money there and there's no way to recover it, they're in trouble, isn't it?
Yeah, so the thing there is that you, as a central bank, you need to ask yourself the question. You are caught between a hard place and the deep blue sea. If you are, it's not like you're trying to dissuade lending, but you're looking at the broader picture. If I don't do this, okay, I know it's going to hurt, especially for small businesses. It's going to hurt for small businesses to be able to maintain, borrow money and all. But if I then don't hold rates at a higher value, at a higher figure, it means that if the currency depreciates, the broader impact will still come down to those small businesses that are complaining, because at the moment, a lot of businesses are import dependent. We're not still up there in manufacturing. Manufacturing is still expensive in Nigeria. So imagine that you don't hold interest rates and the Naira depreciates to 1.7. These same small businesses are going to feel a higher brunt than even trying to borrow money, because most of them are going to import, and the inflation is going to probably rise because people are going to import at a higher value. Then those small businesses are still going to feel it by the time they go to the market to purchase things. So they are looking at, okay, we're caught between a hard place and what is the best alternative? And I think maintaining interest rates is the best alternative for the government.
So this is going to affect jobs as well. It's going to affect production as well. How exactly will this affect jobs? Because this is where it comes down to the average Nigerian now.
So for jobs, because the interest rate has remained, so they are maintaining interest rates. So we're not seeing anything different from what we have experienced in the past few months. The current job market, the current unemployment figure, except the government has other avenues that they are going to use to tackle it. But we expect that everything still remains at the point where it is now. If they then want to, if they are now saying, okay, want to improve job prospects for everyone in the country, it now takes a different measure. You need to fix a lot of things. First of all, one of the greatest things that needs to be fixed in the country is power, because that is one point where every small business is spending an extra income that they are making in trying to maintain, trying to provide that power for their then infrastructure. Because you now check it, if you are, for one of the things that, a number of businesses are complaining is that they can't have staff come to work regularly as they used to, because the impact of, say, things like the petrol cost is high and transportation cost is high for most workers. So they are now working alternatively. So there's some businesses that can't operate on the work from home model. You need to be there physically. What happens to them and the cost of running businesses like that? So a number of those things are all the things that are factored in that the government needs to address, which is way above the monetary side of the government. It now comes down to the fiscal side, which we now have the Minister of Finance and the rest to handle.
Now, Stanley, we have seen a persistent inflationary pressures despite, earlier monetary tightening. At what point do policymakers need to consider alternative strategies beyond, interest rate adjustments?
So thanks for that. That just comes down to the last answer that I gave to you. So the CBN is on the monetary side, and they can only do as much as they can do in tinkering with interest rates and all the arsenals that are within their purview. It then comes up to the other side, which is the fiscal side. Thankfully, we have a new finance minister, young, with different ideas. So he's going to come and see. So we want to see the impact of what that side of government, because they are in charge of every other thing. The CBN can only tinker with interest rate. We need to see an improvement in security. We need to see an improvement in power. We need to see an improvement in infrastructure. We need to see that there are policies that are designed to boost the local, those MSMEs, the small and medium scale enterprises. And some of this you cannot really do without addressing these factors that I've put in place. And it's not on the side of the CBN. It's almost like when the past CBN governor was trying to go into agriculture and trying to give loans, trying to do direct intervention to rice and farm inputs and all that. That was because we had the side of the physical that wasn't really working, that wasn't pulling their weight. So if we then see that side where there is an injection of both funds and political will into addressing those major factors, then we can then see an uptick in probably employment rate, because a lot more people are empowered to start businesses and to maintain them, because it's not just about starting businesses, it's about businesses that can grow and stay. Mm-hmm. One of the statistics that we have is that about 80% of businesses close down in the first 2 years. So how do you reduce that number? How do you make sure that they stay and then they can employ more people as they go further? So it's on the fiscal side that I'll place that burden on.
Okay. Well, speaking of optics, how attractive? I know you said the CBN is maintaining it at 26.5, so nothing might change. But does this still make Nigeria attractive to foreign investors?
Yes, at the moment, Nigeria is
You hesitated there, by the way.
At the moment, Nigeria is attractive for foreign investors for a number of reasons. If you were to check some of the investors that came into the country, and you imagine Mazino, you brought in $1 billion.
Amen.
Am I breaking?
We can hear you. We're answering your prayer. Amen.
Am I breaking?
We can hear you. Go on.
Can you hear me, Mazino?
Yes, we can. Is the devil trying to break our prayer?
I was going to say how he glitched the minute he said 1 billion.
Pray again. It's a Sunday morning. So if I bring in 1 billion naira, amen. Oh, the devil.
Yeah, so if you had brought in investor that brought in $1 billion at say 1.7 or 1.8, and now that the value of the currency has improved to 1.3, now you're going to be getting the return that you're getting. And in addition to that, you have gotten an what do you call it? You've gotten an extra.
I see.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Loud and clear. He's just excited at the 1 billion you mentioned, but we can hear you loud and clear. Please continue.
All right. So if you're now checking it, so from 1.7, imagine, and then the rates were really, I think the interest rate was around 28 or 29%. Now you're getting around maybe 20-something% on the value of your money that you brought in at 1.8. Now you are going to be taking back your money, and the value of the currency has improved, and then you're not even taking it at 1.7. So you have a lot more naira. By the time you're changing your this thing, you had 1 billion that you had changed at 1.8. Now that value had risen to 2-point-something billion that you can now have to then change to the value of your dollar, and it now blows up. So a lot of rating agencies are rating the Nigerian economy and giving it a go. So we have a lot more people coming into the country. To be fair to the government, on the macro side, they are doing a lot more. But on the micro side, which is you and I, we are still not feeling it in the pocket. So it doesn't matter what you do on that point. If the citizens don't start to feel it, then it means that your work is not complete.
Now, Stanley, finally, before we let you go, what should Nigerians realistically expect in the coming months in terms of prices, borrowing, and the overall economic pressure?
So in the coming months, we are heading into the second half of the year, coming into June. And so you expect that we are going to see an uptick in I think inflationary pressures will increase. Right now, we are feeling the impact of the Ukraine war in the country. Why we're having that is that we are seeing the price of petrol that has jumped, thankfully to the likes of Dangote, that has helped to cushion that for Nigeria. That we're not feeling the impact as much as for so many other African countries. But still, the prices are still very high. If you were to ask for operational cost of doing business in Nigeria, transporting a tanker of petrol from Lagos down to Maiduguri will cost you almost as much as bringing it from China down to Lagos. So those infrastructural problems that we have, those gaps, are adding to the cost of doing business. At the moment, I still see inflationary pressure increasing because there's going to be a lot more money that's going to be brought into the economy in circulation due to politics. So I feel like that will increase. Then I see on the business front, a lot of agencies have rated Nigeria. So I expect things like the stock market to keep doing well and the money market to keep doing well. But that's not the true measure of what the economy is. I still see unemployment remaining as what it is. I still see a lot of struggling with power and other critical sectors that are needed for us to drive business. So I'm not really optimistic on all those other fronts, but on the macro side, and in terms of the stock market, in terms of businesses, they can easily just increase prices for themselves. But for the average man, I'll just tell you, keep your belts tightened.
Wow.
And expect a roller coaster from now till
next year. Well, unlike you, final question, Stanley, what's that behind? Are you playing golf?
Yeah, I'm at a golf.
Listen,
golfers.
When I cash in my profits from that $1 billion investment, I'll join you. Thank you very much, Stanley Honora, for helping us break down this morning this very interesting stat from the CBN and the interest rates. Thank you very much. We'll continue to come to you for more of this very exciting information when it comes to business and economy. Thank you, Stanley.
Thank you for having me, Masino. Thank you.
Yes, it is exciting. Isn't it exciting?
I mean, the only thing exciting about that conversation was that 1 billion prayer.
That's got to be exciting.
Yeah, I mean.
Let's take a break. However, we'll be back with more conversation inside of Breakfast Extra. Welcome back. Very interesting conversation happening inside of the PCR with the producers. I'm going to report all of you. In any case, let's talk about World Football Day. Tomorrow, Monday, the 25th, is World Football Day, the global celebration of the beautiful game, football. Not just as a sport, but as a powerful tool for unity, for fitness, and social connection. Across the world, the game continues to bring together people of different backgrounds, languages, and cultures under one shared passion. I don't want to talk about the past week, because if I do, maybe it might anger our guest, but you'll find out who it is very soon. Do tell. Please, Inam, go on.
We call it soccer, but for Nigeria, football is more than entertainment. It's identity, it's hope, and sometimes even a pathway for or out of our hardships. From the streets of football to national glory, the game has shaped generations and continues to inspire millions of young people who dream of wearing the green and white jersey. But beyond the passion and the cheering crowd, there is also growing conversations about how football can be used to promote healthier lifestyles, discipline, and community development. To discuss this, we are joined by a man who has lived the dream, Brown Ideye, a former Super Eagles striker and a 2013 AFCON winner.
Yay!
It's great to have you here this morning, Mr. Brown.
Good morning.
You are welcome. Should we say Arsenal at all in this conversation, or we shouldn't?
See how his face just went.
I'm sorry. Don't log off.
I have to accept. Congratulations. Are you an Arsenal fan?
I'm for everybody and I'm for nobody. Hey, that's
congratulations
just me.
to us.
I'm for football. Well, it's good to have you here. We are excited here in the studio. So let's talk about World Football Day. It's been celebrated globally. From your experience, a man who's lived the dream, who's been in the dream, who has helped us be that major actor inside of our own dreams. What does World Football Day really mean? What does it represent beyond just the game itself?
Yeah, football is everything. You know, when I started my career, it was not the way it is now. Football has taken over the world. You know, you pass through the street, you see kids keep playing football on the road, on the streets, any corner you pass through, you see people playing football. So football has really taken over the world.
Now, as someone who has played at the highest level for Nigeria, how powerful is football in uniting people, you know, across and around different backgrounds and regions as well?
Football is one language. like one of my ex-coach always say, football doesn't have different language. You just one. You know, when it comes to football, everybody understand, everybody speak one language. It's a really, really good thing that we can see kids now, you know, joining academies and making sure that they develop their skills and giving their best in the game. Football is far and wide, and it's something that every kid wants to do now. Every parents want to support their kids to make sure their kids have, you know, a great future in football.
Mm-hmm. Brown, something happened during the weekend. Yes, let's reference it again with the Arsenal win, but something else happened in different offices and different homes, different streets across Nigeria. It was unique.
Yeah.
It seemed like as if everybody forgot who they were, where they came from, what language they spoke, or what tribal mark they had on their faces, and they united. I saw people who were depressed the day before, they were happy the day after, and I realized something, that it's more than just the game. It's a culture, it's a religion. It brings people together. And I'm wondering, in the Nigerian context, for a Nigerian like you who's played football in the highest level, what do you think the Nigerian concept of football is missing? I know we're big on it, but when it comes to uniting people, do you think there can be a bigger force behind it?
Yeah, you mentioned it. You said it all. Football unites everyone. You know, when it comes to football, there is no Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, or North or South. Everyone come together, stay unite, and make sure that they are happy. You know, like you mentioned, Arsenal won the league. You see everybody come together celebrating. They even have a carnival, a parade today. Everyone coming together to united celebrate the victory of Arsenal. You know, it's something good. They have to keep it up. You know, the government have to make sure that they put all the facilities together
And that's the
make sure
thing,
that
Brown. That's the thing, Brown.
football makes everyone united.
That's the thing, Brown. How much effort is the Nigerian government really putting into football? And I mean from the grassroots level. For somebody who has experienced this, do you think that it is enough? Do you think we can use it instead of politics, Seth, perhaps? I'm wondering, but what more do you think we can do in Nigeria for football as that unifying factor?
They are trying, but they have to do more. They have to do more. You know, you have to catch these kids when they are young, from the age of 15, 14, 15. You have to start building. We are struggling when it comes to building, when it comes to starting from the grassroots. You know, I always say in some of my interview, I said, look, the way you build champions, it's from the scratch. You understand? These players from U15, you have to make sure that you infuse them to U17, infuse them to U20, 20, 23, then before you look taking them to the national team. So a grassroots football plays a big role when it comes to, you know, developing champions in future.
Indeed.
Now, when we do look at football, outside of the cheers and the uniforms and the regalias and the debates and the fights as well, football is also linked to health and fitness. How important is the game in promoting physical and mental well-being, especially among young people?
Yeah, you can't take away fitness from football, and you can't take away fitness from lifestyle. Everyone is in the gym. Subscription on gymnastics, it has increased because everybody is in the gym trying to keep fit, trying to make sure, you know, they keep fit in their physical mind, and making sure that they stay fit. So this will play a big role to make sure that you stay fit, make sure that your mental health is good.
All right. There are many young people across Nigeria who want to be like you. And I know it's like a pyramid. There's very few people at the top, one of which is you. How possible is it for a Nigerian youth playing in Ajegule right now to actually make it to the top? What must they do?
It's not easy. I won't lie to you. It's not easy. Dedication, sacrifice, prayers. I started from the rough get to, like you mentioned, it Ajegule, and few of us about close to 50. The ones that made it out is not even up to 5.
Yeah.
So dedication, sacrifice, constant training, and the last of all prayers. Prayers.
Let's talk about that. Those are Jigunle days. What school did you attend? Was it Tolulope or which one is that?
Oshodi.
You attended
Oshodi Secondary School.
Let's talk about those days, and let's go back to the the input schools have in football in Nigeria as well. Because I don't see much these days. I don't know about your time, but back in my time, there was a big push when it comes to sports, especially football, from secondary schools, even from younger. These days, I'm not sure whether it's still there. And even in the Ejigule instance itself, which was big, which was known for football, for bringing out superstars from that area.
Yeah, they have. I went there, I think 3 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. Every December, or maybe 2-3 times in a year, I always visit Ajegula. It has changed. It's not the way it used to be. We started from a sunny pitch, like mud and all that, and we play football on that pitch. But now they have innovated the whole place. They have synthetic now. They played a lot of scouting game. I've done some scouting games there too. It has changed. And about the secondary school thing, they are trying to put in inter-house sports where different schools come together and they play game. During my time, they used to do it. I want to believe that they are still doing it till date.
Now, I'm curious to know from you, Brown. I know we speak about the investment and, the effort that the Nigerian government can put into football. But when we look at icons such as yourself, how much would you say that you have given back to football in Nigeria, especially?
For me, it's all about, looking for the next Brownie Day, looking for the next Mikel, looking for the next, Odio Igalo and or Emmanuel Menike and all that. And the way we can do that is to bring in those clubs to Nigeria and let them, see the talent we have. The game is not the way it is back then when we got our breakthrough. The game has changed. Most of these clubs, they have their own academy. And if you're coming from Nigeria to Europe, you have to be unique. There must be something in you that they will see for them to sign you. So football is not just about kicking the round object and running around. Mentally, physically, you have to be ready. You have to put something in the table that can sell you, that can make you look different from what they have in their academy. So most of all these are young players, they don't have it. So we to come in to make sure that we lecture them, we guide them, we make sure that, they know how the level they have to get to before they can get a contract in Europe. It's a lot.
Brown, fantastic. Brown, finally, since we're celebrating World Football Day, beyond all the trophies, beyond the victories that you've had, what would you say was your most powerful memory or lesson from your football career?
I have to go with the AFCON, 2013 AFCON, because that one hits hard. It's for my country. It's something that I've been wishing to do since when I was a kid, playing for my country, representing my country, and winning a tournament for my country. It's something beyond explanation.
Thank you so much,
Fantastic.
Brown Ideye, for sharing your experiences
Thank you.
and insights with us this morning.
Yes,
we wish
indeed.
you the very best. And of
Thank
course,
you for having me.
Absolutely. News Central will send you an Arsenal jersey. Would you take it?
Please. I just said congratulations to you guys. You want
That's
to
enough.
rub it
Okay.
in.
All right. Thank you, Brown. Good to have you. Bye-bye now.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Well, coming up next, we're going to be having our Weekend Warrior, and you won't guess who it's going to be. We'll be right back. Welcome, and it's time for our Weekend Warrior position, and this is where we say Avengers... Sorry, wrong script. Arsenal fans, assemble. Now, there are football victories that go beyond trophies, and Arsenal's Premier League triumph this season is one of them. After a long, and I mean long and demanding campaign, the Gunners have been crowned champions. making a defining moment in English football and a powerful statement of consistency, structure, and belief under Mikel Arteta. But for millions of fans across Africa, especially here in Nigeria, this is more than just the league title. It's a shared celebration. Arsenal has long been one of the most supported clubs on the continent, and moments like this feel personal and deeply connected to identity.
That's right. And what marks world football, as well as marking world football tomorrow, this victory also opens up bigger conversations about representation in global football. From academy products to first-team stars, African influence continues to shape some of the biggest clubs in the world, and Arsenal is no exception. Players like Bukayo Saka, Eberechi Eze,
yes,
Noni Madueke, and Ethan Nwaneri have become symbols of excellence, resilience, and inspiration, especially for young Africans who now see themselves reflected at the highest level of the game. This is where football becomes more than a sport.
Now, to understand the significance of this moment, we have to look beyond the title itself to what it represents for African fans, for Nigerian supporters, and for the next generation of footballers who dream of the same stage. Arsenal's win is not just about lifting a trophy. It's about visibility, it's inspiration, and global belonging. For many young people in Nigeria, this reinforces a powerful truth. Talent from Africa is not on the margins of world football. It's at the very center of it. And every pass, every goal, every celebration becomes part of a larger story of African excellence on the global stage.
So as Arsenal lifts the Premier League trophy, millions across Africa lift their own sense of pride, not just in the club, but in what it represents. Football once again proves that it is bigger than the pitch. It is identity, it is unity, and it is shared global language.
So from all of us here at New Central, I want to say congratulations to all Arsenal fans, because that was indeed quite the celebration, quite the noise, quite the opera, quite the satisfaction. Even for those of us who aren't absolute football fans, we could feel it. In fact, right now, I believe that I need to belong to a club, because that was something I missed out. I missed out.
Why don't you belong to a club?
Not to be discussed now, because it's just going to dampen all that grrr we just gave. So we'll have this conversation later. But I wasn't brought up in a community where I could absolutely be a part of a team.
Yeah.
I was brought up in front of the television in Sesame Street.
But you should have watched soccer while watching Sesame Street. But I mean, let's not, again, like you said, let's not dampen it.
Yeah.
I think I really commend the Arsenal fans, because after 20 years, at one point I would have probably just been looking a new team to shift to.
Yeah, I'm not exactly very loyal when it comes.
Oh no,
I've not been known to be loyal in my career. HR, don't worry, you're safe.
There's a colleague
So imagine if I belonged to a club.
There's a friend of mine. His name is Deji. Every time Arsenal is playing, he's always like there. And in my head, I'm like, they're always losing.
Isn't this about time?
What's this loyalty? You know,
the people who support the club, who had never seen them win. You know, probably like 18 years old, 15-year-olds and all of that. They had never seen them win, but it was just a shared culture, an inherited culture from their parents or their uncles or their peers and stuff like that. So it was interesting to see.
Very beautiful.
Finally, I breathed a sigh of relief for them as well.
Very beautiful. And the African faces, like you said, the African faces that represent football internationally. There's a joke that they make during the World Cup where if like the UK is playing, they're like, is Africa playing?
Ah, yes, indeed. But of course, isn't it? All right. Tell you what now, let's take a break. We've got the strips coming up, which happens to be Queen Celestine's best part of the show, but she's not here, so you'll be representing for her.
Sadly.
We'll be back with the strips. Yes, indeed, you are welcome. It's time for the strips this Sunday morning. Of course, we have very interesting ones scrolled from all through the week, from some very interesting cartoonists, from a couple of dailies. We have our favorites, actually, I'm not going to lie. Inam is going to be joining me as well today. We're going to be taking a look at these together, aren't we, Inam?
Definitely.
All right. Nigerian cynicism is on another level these days, let me just say this. So we're going to start with our very first one, which won't be disappointing, whichever one the producers choose. Let's start with this. It's Tasukwa, and it's from Business Day. And of course, we're moving toward 2027, and you know what the Nigerian currency for loyalty is.
Rice.
What is it? Rice. What you want, we'll give it to you in rice. Dollars, who cares? Rice. Azuko here, plain, but of course like a crop duster, it's spraying rice to, well, impoverished Nigerians who are collecting it in buckets like manna from heaven. We are spraying hope one bag at a time. And it seems like as if Nigerians always have to beg for what's supposed to be theirs. This is captured very nicely here. The satire is very strong, yes, I know, but it represents exactly what most people, well, I don't want to push that narrative, but it represents what seems to be the Nigerian narrative when it comes to elections. Do you have anything to say about this, Inam, please?
Well, not really. We love rice in Nigeria.
It tells its own story, doesn't it?
We love rice in Nigeria, and I think the government is giving us what they think we love. I was checking today how much a bag of rice is. As of today, 50 kgs of rice is about 77 to 88,000 naira. So if all that sprinkling is sprinkling, according to the government, they think they're doing quite a good job.
Yeah, but you know the sad truth is this, that no matter how much education you put out there, the people who have no choice but to sell votes. And that's where there's a problem. Where there's no education or voter education, you'll continue to have these problems and these expectations, especially from people who have no choice. So, yes, I always say that while we're looking at INEC to help us with free and fair elections, I think that there's something about voter education that they're misplacing, that they're not doing enough of. And this is what results in it. Unless you want to use it as an instrument, then maybe you will not have INEC do its job, which is voter education. But yeah, that's the instance. Unfortunate, but there's worse. Hang in there. Let's show you our next one here. Now, tells its own story, doesn't it? Do you want to go? Do you want to go, Yana? Do you want to?
Go ahead.
All right, cool. So over the week, the name skips me, but the ISIS leader who was claimed to have been killed, who was killed, in fact, here in Nigeria, in northern Nigeria. Now, there's something very cynical about this story here, where you see the American president, Donald Trump, being reported, being interviewed by a reporter. And there in the corner, you can see the Nigerian president in a, what you call that, fetal position?
Yes.
Fetal position. And the word bubbles here. We killed the ISIS leader. No, sorry. We killed the ISIS leader in Nigeria.
Yes, we did it.
Yes, we did. It was bombs everywhere. It was magnificent. A very poor Trump impersonation. But there you see the Nigerian president. Yeah, we only re-killed him. There was word about this same person, this same name being mentioned as deceased from, I think, a couple of years ago when the Nigerian government actually told that he was. But they also made an announcement to say, no, clarify that it wasn't the same person and that this person was the real ISIS leader, second in command, who had been killed. But that's not the picture I want to paint here. It's the narrative that this paints. Now, what do you see, Inam? Let me test and see if you can see it. Trump being interviewed, Nigerian president seems to be in the corner there. If you zoom out and look at the broader picture of what happened over the week, what do you see?
I mean, from my side of the view, is that outside of the fact that we always get correspondence first from Donald Trump,
boom,
he seems more of a leading voice.
Boom.
And having our president, which we have to call him, doing his little turtle something over there is, your speech is not that, doesn't necessarily carry weight. So they wouldn't even ask you for a statement with issues pertaining and regarding your own country.
Fantastic. I don't need to say anything else because I think you got it. You got it. I mean, we're handing over the microphone to another country, another president to actually tell our own story. Now, we appreciate the help, the assistance. Yes, we got this guy. But then again, it's also to the advantage because when you get these elements at the source, you're protecting yourself. And that to them is that's what they're looking out for. It's actually quite selfish. Yes, we need the help. Let's not bite the hand that feeds us. But then as Nigeria, as a sovereign nation, it just seems like we are not taking charge of the narrative. And when you give the microphone to somebody else, you give them the ability to frame your narrative.
Yep.
Yes, we killed him because it's a bleep hole country, of course. That's what you're going to have. Why can't we stand tall and say, we did it? Yeah, with a little bit of their help. Thank you very much.
The government says,
we did it. Yeah, go on.
Unfortunately, the government says no, but we communicate all these things. It's just the algorithm that doesn't make it, put it in our faces. So
it's a very small story. I mean, picture, almost all white space, but it tells a very big implication for the Nigerian side of things. And I hope that we get our heads from out of electioneering for a minute and start to focus on, I'm always big on communication. Communication. We're not doing enough of it, not to the people downward, not to the rest of the world globally. Let's do our next strip for this morning, shall we? Thank you very much. What do we have here? Good. Bandit. So 2 bandits in a forest, both weaponed, having weapons, one of them with a phone. One says to the other, didn't you see how they tracked the former power minister? We have to stop using these phones. The other one says, nah, what you talking about? They know where we are now. They just, Now, I tried doing some research to check which former minister, but I couldn't. So I'm not sure about what that reference was. But it was the second air bubble here where it's like, come on, they know where we've been. They're just not doing anything about it. There's that large narrative that the Nigerian government has been complacent when it comes to actually tracking down insurgents or bandits or unknown gunmen or kidnappers. There's so many of these little tags that we have right now, and it seems to be growing. Only just yesterday, we had the situation inside of the studio where we talked about the Oyo instance. What are you going to call these now? Because it seems mostly for profit at this point. And we know where these guys are at this particular instance, at this particular moment. But it's been an entire week and some. Nothing has been done. It makes you sad to be a Nigerian when you think that there are children involved. Inam, please. That says it all. Thank you very much. Let's move on now. Because I think you did all the talking yesterday when we talked about the instance, the unfortunate instance about these cases.
Yeah, I am at this point. I'm really in agreement with the
cartoonist,
the bandit holding the bazooka.
That's Bulama, your favorite.
The day they want to, they will. Unfortunately, it just hasn't become a priority for the Nigerian government right now to catch anybody. Instead of catching people, you hear statements like, let's reintegrate them, let's reorientate them, let's rehabilitate them.
You didn't like that one when we discussed it.
I didn't like it, actually. Let's rehabilitate them. The craziest that I heard, Mazino, you remind me of the man that said it, where he made a statement where he was like, no, but even Jesus forgave. And I was just like...
I can't remember his name, but yeah, I know.
You remember that statement, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Everything goes with punishment,
well,
even in the Bible.
Let me jump to that conversation yet again. I do understand a bit here, because when you take a look at especially Boko Haram now, you have people who were pulled into the what do you call them? Insurgency forcefully, unwillingly. Let me put it so. We call them unwilling terrorists on that day, if I'm not mistaken. They were conscripted in, and they had nothing, they know nothing. Some of them were even young. And if you've seen the pictures that have been going about of these people after they've been killed, you'd find out that there are very many young people in there. I don't know if anybody's taking notes. Some of them are in their early 20s. So you have to imagine from when they had been conscripted and what willpower they had even then. So when it comes to reintegration, I empathize. A little.
Thank you for the little.
Just a little. All right, thank you very much, guys. Let's check out our next one, shall we? Thank you very much. Let's see. Yes. So this is Business Day yet again. I'm not sure who the cartoonist is. I think it might be. Yes, it's Tasuko. Now, I don't think he really got this image right, if it's who I think he's trying to depict, which let's not say so that we don't put ourselves in trouble. I don't know. But let's just say Nigerian politician up on a tree having fruit, and down impoverished Nigerians who seem to be begging. And you can see the ones down here, they look like the Three Stooges, and their mouths are open waiting for crumbs to drop. I don't think that was not intentional. I think it was, because this is the situation of Nigeria right now. Have you been to a political rally before in Nigeria, Inam?
No, I haven't.
Oh my goodness, I was invited to one the other day. I don't think I want to go anymore. It wasn't very nice.
Why wasn't it nice?
It wasn't nice because what I could see was a stark difference between a top class and a low class and no one in between. And it was how it seemed like they were begging for alms, the hailing, hey, Baba, and everything. And I'm like, you're selling your...
birthright for soup.
You're selling your birthright for a bowl of soup. And it was the carriage of the politicians that made me wonder, like, wait, hang on a second, these are leaders? It doesn't look like they're serving. Because if you were serving, it should be the other way around. Let's take the air bubble here. Be patient, I have sown good seeds for you to harvest soon. Now, once you read that, you have an idea of exactly who it might be that's been referenced here. Over the past 2 weeks, Nigerian president has been about the world, different forums, talking about how the reforms he's making will yield fruit, but only if you guys are patient. You talked about the, what's her name, the interview with the Nigerian president for...
Zainab, yeah.
Zainab, yes. What was your thought about that?
I mean, I do commend her. She was bold enough to ask the questions that we hush about in Nigeria, where every time the president was saying, I think one of the statements that he made was that we should be trading, you know, Pan-Africanism, create apps where we trade amongst each other. And she said, well, you're 200 million population. Why aren't you spearheading that? Anything that he said we should, the question then turned back to say, why aren't you doing that? And as our president, you know?
I don't know. Tell me.
This, you know, answers the question. There's a lot of our shoulda, woulda, couldas in many of our stances and our speeches, but the shoulda, woulda, couldas don't necessarily yield results. He spoke about things that he has done and what has happened to the economy since he removed the subsidy and stuff, but the masses aren't necessarily feeling those reforms.
Not at all, yeah. He was very big on fuel subsidy removal. It was like the one thing you're like, don't worry, be happy in 3 years. Let's move on to our very last one now. This will be the last one for today, stripped from Business Aid again.
This is my favorite one.
Already, is it? Hey, my loan, it's taken too long. Election is just a few months away. Knock, knock, knock. World Bank. Well, there have been requests for aid, developmental aid, and others that we've had our government put in for from the IMF. Is it the IMF? Yeah, the World Bank, actually. And we're waiting on it. But this cartoonist here, Okpara, seems to believe that maybe that's not the objective. Maybe the objective is, we've got 2027 coming. Are we going to need those dollars? Going to need that money? I won't say much about this in order not to implicate anyone, but I think it tells its own story and it's subject to your interpretation. So, hey, have at it.
I really like this one. I really like this. I really like this because, of course, they said it's not leprosy to borrow. Those were the infamous words of the president. He said, it's not leprosy, as long as we pay back. But I think the reason why this stuck out for me was, if you remember, Mazino, at one point, the World Bank had to turn off its comment section.
Yes, they did.
Because the Nigerians went and said, listen, we don't want the money. Stop it. Stop it. So to see a situation where after that statement was being made and then there's now this delay.
Exactly. I'm sorry. I hope you guys have not changed your mind. But in any case, I've enjoyed today's strips. I don't know if you noticed. And I think all of them were very, very cynical, but very, very, the references were pristine. All of them. That will be it for the strips this morning. Thank you very much, Inam, for joining me to help interpret them. We've got a few more conversations to go here inside of Breakfast Extra for a Sunday edition. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
This morning, it's been a very interesting morning, actually, if you're just joining us. This morning's attention, or we're turning our attention now to a growing health concern in Nigeria, spinal cord injuries and the urgent need for specialized rehabilitation care. Across the country, patients living with spinal cord conditions are calling for stronger government support, better facilities, and access to proper long-term treatment that goes beyond emergency care. Our correspondent, Emmanuel Olubobokun, filed this report, and we take a look now.
At the Scan Center in Amuodofin, survivors, caregivers, and advocates gathered with one clear message: no one living with spinal injuries should be left behind. The briefing highlighted plans for a specialized rehabilitation center expected to provide therapy, mobility support, vocational training, and psychological care for survivors.
We are going through a lot of tough times due to lack of rehabilitation after injury. Rehabilitation is very essential because we need to relearn all the things we have been doing before. Like somebody who was a builder who fell from the top of the roof. He will not be able to go and climb the roof again. He will learn new skills. These are the gaps that the rehab facility will fill.
Project designers say the proposed facility is being tailored to meet the unique challenges faced by spinal injury survivors in Nigeria.
Across Nigeria and indeed Africa, thousands of individuals suffer spinal injuries resulting from road traffic accidents, occupational hazard, violence, sports injuries, medical conditions, and other traumatic events. The proposed Spinal Cord Injuries Rehabilitation Center is envisioned as a world-class patient-centered medical rehabilitation facilities that combine healthcare excellence with human, inclusive, and therapeutic architecture.
For CBN Lagos Vice Chairman, rehabilitation must go beyond hospital walls.
Rehabilitation, we are waiting that the society accepts us back because we were gone for some months. We have to start familiarizing ourselves with what we missed, probably what's going on. Most times I realize that when people come out after rehabilitation, people start giving them this funny stare. They look at them like you're coming from space, like you no longer belong here. So we're asking that people, show empathy and, accommodate us back.
Participants also shared stories of resilience while appealing to government, organizations, and Nigerians to support the project.
What we have been clamoring for, because this is a core major recovery pattern of people with spinal cord injury. But without this, life is at lower level. This rehabilitation is there. You're able to know from the beginning, when you have accident, next 3 months, you're able to learn most of these things, to avoid breakdown of your body, to how to move your bowel, how to go everything. Rehabilitation teaches you.
As the campaign gathers momentum, CBN says the goal is not only to restore movement, but also to restore hope and dignity to survivors. In Lagos for News Central, Emmanuel Olubobogun.
So the concern being raised is simple but critical. Without proper rehabilitation centers, many patients are left with limited chances of recovery or even independence. Health advocates say this gap in the system continues to affect quality of life and increases pressure on families and caregivers as well. So this morning, we are asking, what does Nigeria need to do differently to improve spinal cord care? And how close are we to building a system that truly supports recovery, dignity, and inclusion? So to help us understand this better, we're joined by Abdulwahab Matekbo, the International President of the Spinal Cord Injuries Association of Nigeria. Mr. Matekbo, thank you very much for joining us here on Breakfast Extra. So, sir, we just came off of, a report there with our correspondent, Olubobogun, who gave us a very interesting idea of what's happening. But let's begin with the situation on the ground here. What's the current reality of spinal cord injury patients in Nigeria after initial hospital treatment?
As we are now, spinal cord injury patients are on their own, as the popular saying goes, because the only access we have now is taken from the scene of the accident or fall to one of the tertiary hospitals. And once we spend a few weeks or months there, we are asked to go home. Meanwhile, this is not the norm in advanced countries and other places where healthcare services are at a higher level. Normally, when a spinal cord injury person leaves the hospital like that, he's taken straight away to the rehab hospital. And most often, we spend more time in rehab than you spent in the hospital, because the rehab is where you're going to relearn a lot of things. But unfortunately, as we speak, we do not have that facility in Nigeria, not even in West Africa. And I'm not sure we have, even in Africa, maybe with the exception of probably South Africa. Otherwise, anybody who wants to complete the treatment as is well for spinal cord injury, we have to go outside Nigeria. That's the situation which we are at the moment.
Now, your association has been advocating for specialized rehabilitation centers. You've just mentioned that there are very few within the West African region. Why is this need so urgent at this point?
Oh, thank you very much. First and foremost, spinal cord injury persons are also members of the society. And spinal cord injuries occur not at birth or not at birth, so it is acquired along the line. And most of our members have or have been in productive activities before they had their injuries. So to go back to the productive life will be very, very difficult. And what normally happens is this, irrespective of your status or position or whatever you were doing in the society before, whether you are a student, you are a worker, or wherever you may be, once you have that accident, you have been removed from the community, you be removed from the society, as it were. But if you complete the protocols, you go to the teaching hospital, from there you go to rehab, there's every chance of you being reintegrated into the society again. You go back to where you left from, or there could be some modification, but you still go back to productive life. Without rehab, this is not possible. And that's why we already said that majority of persons with spinal cord injury in Nigeria are just wasting away at home because they have no access to rehab after their injuries.
So what are the biggest gaps that you currently see in the Nigerian healthcare system when it comes to spinal cord care and recovery then?
Spinal cord rehab is just a part of a set of rehabilitation facilities. But as we speak, Nigeria does not have a rehabilitation policy. We don't have. And so without a rehabilitation policy, you will not begin to look at the components of rehabilitation itself. It is true we have some rehab for those who have been drug addicts, for example. And we also know that there should be rehab facilities at the correctional centers. But for those who have gone through physical trauma, injuries like spinal cord injury, there's no place for us to go. The only thing you'll find around are physiotherapy clinics. And just physical therapy is just one aspect of all the therapy you have to go through post-injury.
So how does that lack of proper rehabilitation affect not just patients, but their families? Because from our report now, and I think we also touched on it when we were introducing you, we talked about the impact on families across Nigeria. So how does this affect the families and caregivers as well?
All right, it's a very heavy burden actually. On the injured person himself or herself, like I said earlier, he won't be able to go back to productive life. And then the family and friends will be, we spend all their time and resources on managing him or her, because if you look at it, a spinal cord injury person outside Nigeria, like in Europe, for example, the level of functionality is very, very high compared to why is it high? Because they had access to rehab. Without rehab now, it means that person will not be independent. He will depend on his family for everything because he won't be able to go to work. He won't be able to go back to school. He won't be able to engage in any economic activities. And in a situation where people are still struggling to fend for themselves, then they have to go and spend for some other person who is just sitting at home or lying down on the bed. Only thing he will do or she will do is just to eat and sleep and lie down and endure pain and endure isolation and all sorts of things. So it's a very, very heavy burden. And that is why most patients some patients with spinal cord injury are abandoned in the hospital because after spending so much, the family discovered that this guy is not making any improvement. He still cannot sit on his soul. He cannot put his spoon into his mouth.
Is that a big problem in Nigeria? Is that a big problem in Nigeria? Do you have stats to back that? Like how many spinal cord injury patients do we have abandoned in Nigerian hospitals? How bad is the situation?
In hospital, we don't have the data. It is the hospital that can say, but we know that sometimes we get calls from hospital and they'll say, please, we don't even want to collect the money that this guy has accumulated. Just come and remove him from here. And that, in fact, was the basis of why Spinal Cord Injury Association of Nigeria was formed, because at the Gobi Orthopedic Hospital at that time, so many patients were there who have been abandoned by their families and they have nowhere to go. And that was the beginning of the association in 1984. But then we don't have the statistics of those who are abandoned in the hospital. We have a fair idea of those who are abandoned at home. Because we know the prevalence of spinal cord injury in Nigeria. We know the number of people we are seeing. Those of us who are seeing ourselves, we know there are a lot more of people who are just locked up at home, who cannot do anything, who cannot go out, and who have no access to the world because of their injuries.
Now, outside of the medical attention and treatment that are needed, in facilities and centers, I know that, especially when it comes to the elderly, you've got establishments like hospices. I don't know if those are things that are available in Nigeria. But when we look at the different facilities that can aid and relieve some of these, issues, what are the practical steps, first of all? And then what kind of facilities should we have in Nigeria right now that can be, established, and how can the government come in outside of private sector to help with these establishments and establish these sectors?
Okay. The government has actually done something in the past, like the premises we have. We have a very big chunk of land in Lagos, which was given to us by the government to construct a rehab hospital, actually. But practically for over 30 years, that land has been there. We're not able to develop it because nobody is taking it as a priority to see, okay, this is a gap in the health. We know that rehab is part of trauma treatment, but nobody is looking at that aspect for now. And what we expect is this: if we have a rehab hospital, for example, spinal cord injury is a life-changing event. Completely changes everything. The person cannot do anything again. It affects our mental health. It affects our economic productivity and everything. And without that gap being filled, a lot of our members are facing depression. And in fact, within the disability community, in disability community, we have what we call clusters. Spinal cord injury is just a cluster. The cluster with the highest rate of suicide, highest suicide rate is the spinal cord injury cluster because of depression. Because when somebody who has been running around, taking care of himself, earning his own living, suddenly he depends on everybody. So he depends on others for everything, from dressing, from undressing.
I'm sorry,
from
sir. Can I just
apologies
to just cut you there. I apologize profusely. I'm trying to dissect your answer. When we're looking at how the government can come in, and of course we did mention the private sector. You mentioned that the government did donate or give land for a rehabilitation center to be built. I'm not sure how many years ago that was done, but of course they came on and they said, well, here's a space, you can do with it as you please. What is the reason why that center has not either been built or it has not been finished and accessible to?
Okay. It has not been built, not even finished, has not even started. The reason is, like I said before, if there's a policy on rehabilitation, if the federal government has a policy on rehabilitation, as a nation, we have a policy on rehabilitation. You begin to look at the different types of rehabilitations we are talking about. That is going to, the policy is going to be worked on. Like that, okay, these are people you might need physical rehab, you might need psychological rehab. You did, but there's no policy. And the land itself was given to us in 1990 or thereabout. At least Brigadier Ajay Asake was the governor in Lagos at that time. It's been quite a long time, over 30 years now. And so the aim was that we expected the government to assist us to build the hospital and then to equip it so that people will leave the hospital and go through rehab again and go back to the community. But it's there. But we have realized now that even the government alone cannot do it. The government has a lot of government hands are full, but we know that it's still the responsibility of government to fill that gap. But we expect, under the present circumstances, we expect that, okay, the government has done a bit, given all the land. It's so easy to get land in Lagos now. But with the land, we believe that the government, state government, federal government, and then corporate organizations and individuals can actually assist now at this stage, because it's no longer a burden that we should expect the government alone to shoulder, even though basically it is the government that should make it have part of its health policies and then put infrastructures in place for that to be achieved.
I'm curious to know, and I say this because I like to give the government their flowers when they deserve them. That's almost very seldom. But when they do deserve them, I think it makes sense for us to give them their flowers. Government gave land almost 30 years ago. Here we are 30 years later, and you're telling me that with regards to the what was the word he gave, Mazino, in order for it to be approved?
Don't know which one.
The processes. I think you mentioned processes and whatever documentation that needs to be given. I believe when you approach the government in 1990 for them to give you land, strategy and reports would have been documented. All the necessary documentation would have been in the document that you were giving to the government in order for the government to give you the land, which in turn they did do. I'm curious to know, your organization, this is 30 years later, outside of the government not necessarily building the hospital, not unless you are telling me that the hospital was going to be a general hospital that would be run by the government. What have you done to make sure that this hospital is being built? I mean, it's 30 years later.
Yeah, thank you. We try to fill the needs as they arise. You know, like I mentioned at the beginning, that some patients were abandoned in the hospital. When that portion of land was given to us, we have the CFO. When it was given to us, the immediate needs at that time was to bring in patients that have been abandoned in the hospitals. And so a few bungalows, self-contained accommodations and facilities were built. And people and our colleagues who have been abandoned in the hospital, or who have no place to go again, or who can no longer go back to where they were living before because they have to do modification that they could not afford, they were brought into the place. And so the priority at that time was to shelter people who need shelter. And along the line, I think a couple of organizations came around to say, okay, what do you need? Let us build a small clinic for you. Okay, let us build a small event hall for you so that you use that to generate some funds. So those are the things that were being done all along in the last 30 years. And then, you know, sometimes priorities changes, depending on who the leadership, at a particular time. But now we felt that, no, enough of all this shelter and all this. Let us just have the rehab now, so that people will be independent. They don't need to be depending on the shelter that we're going to provide. Let them come into the rehab, spend some years or some months, and then go back to the community and then reintegrate, so that we don't need to be looking for shelter for those who have no place to go, or who even have a place to go, but they have no way of taking care of themselves after they have left the hospital. So those are the things we have been doing for the past 30 actually. But you know, these things are very, very cost intensive. And it's not a thing we can do as an NGO.
No, I do understand that. So with all due respect, I do understand the fact that everything comes at a cost. That's a no-brainer. Everything comes at a cost. But I'm a bit concerned to say that when we look at the cost implications, it took us 30 and odd something years for us to get to a point where we say, well, at the time it was not a priority. And here we are 30 odd something years later, and we see that it's still a priority, but the ducks are not in a row in order for us to have centers like that erected till now. So for me, the question that I would ask is, if it was not a priority in these 30 something years, it's 2026. Are you basically telling me that in order for us to gain the capital, to build everything, it'll take us another 30 something years for 60 years for a rehabilitation and a spinal cord center to be erected in Nigeria? It's a bit, it's not a good note.
No, it is not. I agree with you totally. It is not. But you see, like I said, building the rehab hospital, building any hospital or rehab hospital for that matter, shouldn't have been the responsibility of an association. It should have been the responsibility of the government. It's part of the trauma care. Rehabilitation is part of trauma care. It's not for association to actually do. If the government had done what it's supposed to do, we wouldn't have even asking for land, or now be thinking of, okay, using the land to build hospital, because we have waited and the government has not built a single one in Nigeria. So it wasn't our responsibility it shouldn't have been, even though the government gave us that land for that purpose. Now, like I said, it is the government's responsibility to complete the treatment, to complete the trauma treatment, because, like I said, rehab is part of trauma. But now that we have realized that, because even then the numbers are increasing, as you know, the number of people who are involved in road crashes is increasing every day. Now, violence here and there, banditries and kidnapping and all that, and people the rate of violence now is far, far higher than what it was 20, 30 years ago. So our numbers are increasing. A lot of people are getting frustrated, and they're getting out of their jobs, and people are spending a lot maintaining and managing spinal cord injury. We now said, look, I think we need to now go back to the dream of our forefathers, even though the government has not done it in the last 30 years. Like I said, it is not responsible for an association to build a rehab hospital. It is the government's responsibility. The government has not done so since independence. Let me put it that way.
But the government provided land. The government provided land. I think one of the reasons why bodies and entities such as your own was established was for you to do something with that. If you are saying today on air that we'll go back to the dream of our forefathers 30-odd something years later, it's a bit of a concerning situation for us to say, well, because the numbers are increasing now, this is something that needs to be done. And then we lay it on the government to say, well, it was not a priority for us then, but because the numbers are rising now, we have made it our priority.
Let me be sincere with you. There is no country in the world where spinal cord injury association members build a rehab hospital. Now, it has never happened. It could be that the government gave that set outside that land, say, okay, we are going to build rehab facilities here. You take it. You be the custodian of the property. But the government has gone back. The government knows we are there. When the president was the governor, he fenced the place. He did landscaping. Well, they know that we are there, but they know that that's what we needed. We needed something more than that. But the government has been silent. We are saying that it is the responsibility of the government to provide rehab facility for everybody that will need it in Nigeria, not an association. But even the government gave us that, like, we agree. We thank them for doing that. But they know that they know that the purpose of that place was to have a rehab. They also know that there is no rehab. They also know that we all go outside. They also know that even people in government who have spinal cord injury are flown abroad for rehab. So why would they, we don't want to be blaming them. We now say, look, let us start the blame game. Don't blame our association. Don't blame anybody. Let us come on and do it. Now that we have realized that we have to do it, let us do it. That's the plight we have. That's the position we are standing on right now. Let us just get it done now. Whether it is 30 years late or 60 years late, okay, we want to do it now. Let us just do it now. Thank you.
Mr. Matekbo, that critical view there was absolutely necessary, so we get it, from both sides. And I think that call is even louder now. And now we know exactly where associations like yours stand and where perhaps the government should also put in more effort. Thank you very much, Mr. Matekbo, for having this conversation with us. It's an absolutely necessary one, and we hope that, we have that rehabilitation center sometime in the near future, not another 30 years. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful indeed.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
We have our very last conversation coming up. Do stay with us. We'll be having it in just a moment. Conversation here for Breakfast Extra Sunday edition. Now to a truly inspiring story of hope, story of sacrifice and second chances. Yesterday in Abuja, a foundation dedicated to supporting people undergoing organ transplants hosted its 4th Living Donor Day fundraiser dinner, celebrating individuals who made the extraordinary decision to donate organs to save lives. Now, from spouses donating kidneys to loved ones to family members stepping into moments of medical crisis, the event shone a light on people proving that organ donation can offer hope where there once seemed to be none.
This event also opened an important conversation about awareness, access to organ transplants, and why many Nigerians still fear or misunderstand living donations. We need to understand how important it is to donate organs, the misconception, and where donors can still live healthy, fulfilling lives. Joining us now this morning is Dr. Obi Ekwena, a transplant and urologic surgeon. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, well done on the work that you are doing so far.
Yes, indeed. Doctor, thank you. This is not an honorary doctor because we stopped using that from last week. It's a real doctor. Doctor, you're welcome. It's a very interesting event you guys had in Abuja. And I don't know what it could have been like. How full was that hall of people who had made this sacrifice? Tell us about it.
I really appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you so much. Yes, so our organization is called Clarion Call Care Foundation. This year is our 4th year putting together an event that brings living donors, people who've donated a kidney to a loved one in Nigeria. So, as you guys know, transplantation began in Nigeria in 2000, and that pioneer work was started by St. Nicholas Hospital under the leadership of 2 doctors, Dr. Bamboye and Dr. Shinobare. And so since that time, probably in my guess, because the data is not quite published in the way that you would want it done, but there's been multiple transplant programs, and so over the years, 25 plus years, I would say probably at least 2,000 people have donated a kidney in Nigeria. And so one of the things that happens is that a lot of these individuals that have given this gift of life are not cared for in the way that you would expect. And so follow-up is a challenge. And we, as an organization, wanted to take it on ourselves to make sure we provide support for those donors, and also use that opportunity to educate the public about what living donation is and how to properly do so.
Doctor, I'm interested to know, what is it that really inspired you to start this foundation? And of course, its initiative to champion support for organ transplant and patients.
Yeah, I am a transplant surgeon. That's what I do. My goal has always been to try to find a way to give back. But particularly in Nigeria, there's an issue that, some of these things, when, purpose is always sort of tied to trying to find a way to provide a solution,
Right.
or at least be part of a solution. So one of the challenges, as you know, is the exploitation of people who don't I guess poverty leaves people vulnerable to exploitation, and due to that, there have been many stories of exploitation, and even within the transplant programs, there has been exploitation, and so that got me thinking with a group of people that I work with that, one of the ways to do that is to really, first of all, you have to recognize the people who have actually given, right? And then, use that as a platform to, provide support. We do have to take care of these individuals, whether they've been, whether they voluntarily gave or they were coerced to give. We need to recognize and identify these people, and then use that as an opportunity to speak to the media, or at least what you guys are doing right now is fantastic in terms of dispelling some myths about donation, knocking on the government's door to provide standardization, talking to groups about what donation should be, and opportunities like this allow us to do that. So.
And why was it very important to shine a light on, individuals who had made that sacrifice?
It's not an easy thing to do, right? When patients who have kidney failure walk into my office, and I tell them, "Hey, look, your ticket to a better health is asking somebody to give you an organ." It's a difficult ask to, ask someone to give a part of themselves so you can live. And so that ask is challenging. And then imagine that some people will actually voluntarily subject themselves to donation. So, the least we can do is to, provide, a day that we say, "Hey, look, thank you. We appreciate what you've done. Thank you for the gift of life." I will say this, in Nigeria in particular, kidney failure is almost is essentially a death sentence. 90% of patients who come into the hospital with kidney failure are going to die within a month. And so it's a abysmal statistics for this region. And that's because dialysis is a bridge. It sustains someone's life for temporarily, but it's unaffordable. It's almost an unaffordable luxury in Nigeria. And so patients still have to pay out of pocket for dialysis. So transplantation is really a life-saving event for patients. So at our event, we are able to, bring donors and recipients. So yesterday, we had donors and recipients there who were able to really tell their life story to, they're people that have never been to our event. It's a small event, we probably have 100 or 150 people, who come together, and we, have donors. I think we had about 10 people who had donated, and a few recipients that were there. And it's really a small event to just sort of highlight and people really tell their stories. They tell, their plight and how they overcame, and how people, the donors speak freely and about how they made the decision to donate. And there are people there that had never, they're shocked. They're like, oh my God, I've never met someone who actually donated a kidney or heard the story. And it kind of simplifies it. It makes it touchable. You can actually reach out and touch someone who's donated an organ, and is living a normal life. And so that's really the essence of our organization.
So there was a very grim reality you touched on while you were giving a response there. About 90% of people who have kidney failures here in Nigeria would actually die. That's very sad. But there's also that consideration by the donor as well, because it's not entirely absolutely free of risk now, is it? Or maybe there are myths that you might want to dispel now when it comes to donating an organ?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nothing is without risk, right? You walk out on the street, there's risk, with everything. But, and I'm not trying to, dumb down this, donation, living donation has to be done in a very standard way. When I mean standard, first of all, living donation is safe. I want to make sure that everyone understands that. So it's okay, it's safe to donate a kidney. And now, who donates is the important thing. There's an extensive sort of testing that we do to make sure that someone is actually able to donate their kidney and be able to live a normal, healthy life afterwards. So we have two kidneys. Most people have two kidneys. And you can donate one kidney to somebody else who needs it and still live your life just like nothing happened. And so that is the basis of why this is even possible. So one can restore the person's life, change the trajectory of that person's life and the trajectory of their family, by giving this gift of life, by donating one kidney, that is by someone who's healthy. So not everybody can donate, obviously. So
I'm actually having a bit of a moment because I did have someone that was very dear to me in Nigeria that we lost a few years ago, of course, to kidney failure. But I'm interested to know, because when we were having conversation, they did communicate to him that he needed a kidney transplant, but they had suggested that he perhaps go to South Africa or India, to get second opinions and whatnot, and perhaps even get the transplant. I think he was on a donor list at one point. But I'm curious to find out, could you perhaps, and I don't know, maybe with the internal family, this was a conversation that was had, but it's dawning on me now that even in the conversations that we had, there was never a moment where I asked myself, could I probably be a match? Could I probably be a match to him, or could I donate a kidney? Are there reasons why maybe perhaps sometimes when we are having conversations like this with our practitioners within Nigeria, none of them actually even raise the fact that says maybe reach out to your family and stuff? Why the push to automatically go abroad and get these issues, sorted out?
Right. I think, there are two layers to your question. Number one is the person who has the ailment needs to be well informed, right? So that's one, person who's dealing with the issue needs to be well informed and needs to ask, make that ask. Or their family members, there has to be that discussion, that open discussion, because a lot of times people, at least in my experience in Nigeria, even in the United States where I practice, folks don't like to talk about their challenge. And if you don't talk about your challenge, then, solutions are not sometimes going to come by. So that's one. So there has to be transparency when, if something is hurting you, if you have, a challenge, it needs to be, families and friends need to talk about it. And then the other part is, trust in the system. There's a lot of trust issues, trust in the healthcare system within Nigeria. And so, what really brought me first time to come to Nigeria was, I mean, I trained after so many years in the United States, and I became a transplant surgeon, and I really, really wanted to come back to Nigeria to, give back to the place that nurtured my, formative years. And so I, came in, with help and collaboration, and started, sort of doing some transplants. And at Umuahia was the first time, and then, been all over the country doing some transplants and trying to transfer skill. And so during that time, we've been able to sort of show that, this capacity can be provided here. So, there are centers that are doing transplants, in safely, and so we still
I'm
are
curious. I
able
want to know
to.
how many of these centers do we have in Nigeria, and how many of these doctors like yourself do we have in Nigeria? Just to give us a good idea.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, I'll tell you the big centers, at least the places that I know that are doing quite a bit. So in Lagos, obviously St. Nicholas is still the dominant center there. In Abuja, you have the Zenith, and you have hospitals like NISA and some other centers that I fail to recognize their names now. But and Ahmadu Bello has a transplant center, and some other centers in.
So basically,
in
it
the
is
north.
happening in Nigeria, and it is happening in safe environments with safe doctors that are
Exactly.
certified.
Absolutely.
So this is hope to know. But
but affordability is another thing.
Affordability is another thing. But unfortunately, we can't because we are out of time. But
sure,
real quick, if you can tell us and for only families or people who absolutely need this, before some people think it's an economic ladder out of suffering, where do people who absolutely need this help begin from? Real quick, please,
right,
so we can round up.
Right, sure. We are Clarion Call Care Foundation. We have a website, clarioncallcare foundation.org. We are available and willing to help patients. And so people can reach us, or you can Google my name.
Okay. I think your name will be
there.
Googleable. Absolutely, Dr. Obiekawa.
So I really appreciate you guys having me, and thank you for shedding light on living donation. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It was grand to have this conversation with you. Thank you for being our last guest.
Appreciate you guys.
You're welcome. And there we have it. We're at the end of a fortnight with you here on Breakfast Extra.
That was a good one.
It was absolutely a good one. Absolutely enjoyed learning some little South African words and stuff from you yet again.
What have you learned?
What was the one from the other day? What brings about it?
When's I gonna do it?
That one.
Say it.
I can't. Anyhow, it's been a great one here. Thank you very much for being our viewers for the past 2 days here for breakfast. Don't forget now, it doesn't stop because Breakfast Central resumes tomorrow morning. Jonathan Olive and, of course, Benga will be here to be your trio. We would like to say, hey, keep those comments coming on YouTube. We enjoy reading them, even the ones that are...
them.
Yeah, we see them. You know what she means now. Thank you. It's goodbye from us, and we'll catch you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.